Good morning and welcome to the Future You panel discussion. This is all about you. It's about the future that you're going into. It's a discussion about jobs, about the job market, about postgraduate study, about how you need to prepare yourself and what to expect in these extraordinary times. But extraordinary things are happening and you have extraordinary potential. And we have a wonderful panel of people from jobs and universities, from careers, from the world of employment. They've got a lot of experience and a lot of expertise, and they're going to share that with you. So I'd be delighted to introduce, first of all, Matt Williamson. Matt is the head of university recruitment at Teach First. We also have Louise Mitchell, who is senior talent acquisition lead at JISC. We have also Ben McGee, postgraduate recruitment officer from the University of Salford, and Ashley Heaver, who is Director for Talent Acquisition at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So welcome all of you to this discussion, and we're going to dive straight in with our first question, which you'll all have an opportunity to answer and come back on. And this one is about recruitment diversity, which is obviously such a big topic for recruiters and a big concern and issue for students, and one of the most important issues of our time, really. So how do you, in your individual organisations, how do you ensure that your recruitment is representative of the diversity of the student population? And I'm going to put Matt Williamson on the spot there first, Matt.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. Really nice to be here. So Teach First is an education charity, and we essentially recruit graduates to go into classrooms and teach in low-income communities. And diversity for us is absolutely at the heart of everything that we do. It's really important to us to have people at the front of the classroom who are representative of the pupils in that classroom through all characteristics. What I would say here is that this is such a hot topic for every graduate recruiter. You know, if you would speak to any graduate recruiter today, they would tell you that it's sort of front and center of their strategy. And there is no sort of one thing that we do that defines our strategy. I would really sum it up as the sum of lots of different parts, really. So for us, it's all about looking at where we promote our program in terms of the range of universities that we go to. We actually recruit from 110 universities, which we're really proud of, and really making sure that our materials are accessible to all, and that the campaign reflects who we're looking for our cohort. The other thing to sort of pinpoint, and I guess this is something that different graduate employers do to different extents, is our selection process. So our selection process is completely blind in the sense that any sort of personal characteristics are removed from the application form and screened by two separate people through the selection process. So there's the academics are looked at, but the university that you go to, for example, isn't looked at. And the key competency questions are really focused in on, not the personal characteristics that you put on the form. And we also have something called, we don't have an assessment centre, we have what we call a development centre. And we introduced this a couple of years ago, and we actually give you feedback on the day. And part of what we look for is how you take that feedback and how you bring that feedback to life on the day and show that you've learned from the feedback we've given you. And for us, that has been a really positive step forward in terms of not just looking for experience that people have, but looking for behaviours that people have. And that's something that we're really proud of. Oh, I can't hear you there, Chris. I don't know if that's anyone else.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Just interested that you've effectively rebranded the assessment centre as a development centre, and that's a very interesting change of pitch, because assessment centre sometimes looms a little ominously, doesn't it, in the graduate horizon, and that sounds a much more positive experience, definitely.
Yeah, it's framed as a selection day at our development centre, so obviously there is a selection element to it. People unfortunately are still unsuccessful at it, but it's framed in that way, and I do think that helps people to bring their best potential on the day.
Interesting. Ashley, how do those experiences chime with you at Enterprise?
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me on the panel today. So as I was introduced, I'm Ashley Heaver. I've been with Enterprise nearly coming up to 20 years in March, so a long time. I left university with a 2-2 in criminology from the University of Hull, and I really struggled to get a job anywhere on any graduate program, but I saw a job advertising graduate opportunities in Loughborough when I went back home, and the rest is history. So I also chair our LGBT network, Enterpride, as well. So I look at it and think, I look at myself and look at the opportunity I was given when many other employers wouldn't give an opportunity to someone with a 2-2 from a non-Russell Group university, and we really do deliver that across the whole of our business. And we, like Teach First, have recruited from well over 100 different universities last year. We actively go and visit all of these universities as well. So we do things from careers fairs, or virtual fairs as they are now, skill sessions. We work with different societies. We sponsor a society called Enactus, and again, that it really helps us engage with students across the whole of the country, not just particular ones. Our recruitment team are based all over the UK as well, so we're on universities' doorstep, so there's none of the, in the old world, we didn't have to travel halfway across the country to get to a university as well. And as well as doing that from a university perspective, we really try and work with, we work with different websites. We work with a website called My G Work. We work with Helen Cook, who runs My Plus Consulting from a disability perspective, again, to really try and ensure that students are seeing that, we are open. We do encourage applications from all candidates, and we really want our business to be reflective of the communities in which we operate, and that's why it's really important that we work closely with those local universities, with colleges and schools in those local areas as well. And we do a lot of work and try and really have our employees tell their story across our social networks, where we promote this through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and really hearing from our employees about what it's like to work at Enterprise, and ensure that there's role models at all levels of the business, not just from leadership, but if you're a graduate coming into the business, you want to see someone that's maybe been there a year, who has a disability, and go, actually, you can be successful at Enterprise. It doesn't matter what background you've come from. So, like you said earlier, every employer is really looking at what they're doing around diversity, and it's important when you're looking to attract, but you've also got to be able to deliver that as well when you are an employee in the business. And we do a lot of work around that as well, from the networks we have, from our Enterprise to our Women in Leadership. And so that's a little bit about what we do.
Thanks, Ashley. That's fascinating. And both Teach First and Enterprise, obviously major graduate brands, and JISC is perhaps, Louise, an emerging graduate brand, and I'm sure all of these principles and pillars are very important here too, aren't they?
Absolutely. JISC is new to the graduate market. Roles before that have been functional roles where we've brought on graduates early on, but next year is going to be our first rotational program, where we're having a number of graduates come in and rotate throughout the business, doing different roles and gaining different experience. So new to us, but diversity and inclusion certainly isn't. It's one of our guiding principles as an organisation. So it's really key to us that we get this right with our graduate program. And some of the things we do, the guys have talked about they're doing, and we'll be doing a lot of that as well. But I guess for us, one of the key things we focus on is broadening our horizons as much as possible when it comes to attracting the most diverse range of candidates we possibly can. And some of the things we do, for example, and again, not just in graduates, but across all of our recruitment, is the way we word our adverts. We don't ever say to people, you've got to tick all the boxes. We recognise that the perfect candidate doesn't exist. We're not going to get someone who can come in and do exactly everything that we want them to do from the day they start. So we say to people, we're not expecting you to tick all the boxes. If you can just tick some of them, then great. Absolutely, we'd love to hear from you, because you might be exactly what we need. It's about recognising that those hard skills that we might be looking for aren't the be all and end all. And we want people who can add to our culture, not conform to our culture. Is very much how we see things. We're very careful about using gender-specific wording in our adverts as well. For example, we know one of the reasons we say to people we don't want them to tick all the boxes is because we know anecdotally and through research that if a woman was to see an advert where she didn't tick all the boxes, she's far less likely to apply than a man would be. And we want to make sure that people feel comfortable applying for our vacancies, no matter what their background is. We've implemented training across the organisation for managers on conscious inclusion and make them aware what they need to do and what their biases might be that they might not be aware of. And we also focus very much on looking at our assessment centres, which we do call assessment centres, although I love the idea of the development centre now I've heard it. We try to put people in as much ease as possible. So, for example, we don't use formal assessments that you might come up against in some other assessment centres. We use things like escape rooms and things like that, so people actually relax and they can actually show us who they are rather than worrying too much about the assessors who are sat around them and thinking they've got to behave in a certain manner. We try to make people as comfortable as possible so we can actually see who they are. And those attributes can come out. So we're making decisions based on that.
Thank you, Louise. That's really interesting. And we've heard from different employers, but Ben, I'd be really interested to know how all of that now works out in student recruitment at the University of Salford.
Absolutely. It's something that we do well and something we're very proud of. Obviously, our location really helps with that. Salford in the Greater Manchester area is a massively diverse community, and that's something that's completely reflected in our student body. But it's not only looking at the graduate market, it's ensuring that students get the information as early as possible. So our outreach team do a load of good work, raising aspirations, talking to BAME community, first in family, showing the support that they can get when they're at university. And it's that support that they get throughout that's going to help them transition to postgraduate study. It's showing that opportunities are there for everybody at the university, ensuring they know the support they're able to access and the support they will continue to receive from the university. It's working with companies like the people that are on the panel here. They'll come to the university, as they've mentioned, to the recruitment fairs. So they know the experience they need to gain or the range of companies they can work for in the future. And it's ensuring that we give them the confidence and skills to be able to pursue those opportunities. But it's not just looking at it in the local or national field. We're an international university and very proud of that fact. We've got over 120 different countries represented at our university, and it's something we're definitely looking to continue. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult at the moment, which is why we're trying to be as flexible as possible when it comes to ensuring our students get the support that they need.
Yeah, thanks. And that's it's good to hear that sort of continuum that's starting very early, the universities and employers working together with young people before they even get to university and then taking all the way through. But of course, all of that is wonderful, but we're talking about a very different year at the moment, aren't we, and a very different time. And one of the questions that comes up again and again from students when we talk to them and graduates is, are they looked at differently because they have had such a unique experience? And I think that's right to say, isn't it? There has never been a year like it for the student and graduate experience. There is a concern that employers or university recruiters may look at them differently because of the disruption to the learning, for example. Is that a factor and a fear? Ashley, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, we looked at this internally as well, and it has been a unique year. I don't think I've ever heard the sentence or the saying, you're on mute, as often as I've ever heard in this past year. So that's something that has been interesting. But we've looked at it, and it's down to us as an employer to really understand and look at things from a student perspective and go, okay, so there's going to be people coming into the recruitment process that may have had a placement year cancelled. Their summer internship may have been cancelled. Their leadership role that they were going to have with the sports team may no longer be there. They have had to, perhaps they've studied from home rather than going back to the university. Their part-time job may have ended. So things that we would usually look to bring out in an interview may not be there, or they may not have the most relevant experience. But I just want, from our perspectives, people coming into a process who would be applying for our graduate program to be assured and feel good that we know this as an employer. Our recruitment teams have been, we've had workshops on it, we've worked with our hiring managers on it. And there's still great examples that students can use when talking. They may have done some volunteering. They may have been doing something at one of the local supermarkets. They may have helped out in the local community with things, or they may have had caring responsibilities for families. And we are working and ensuring that our team and our hiring managers really get that and understand it, and are not, I suppose, looking at somebody's last year and thinking, well, they didn't do this or they didn't do that. There's still a whole load of stuff that you can talk about as a student. You have had to be flexible like you've never had to flex before. You've had to look at new and innovative ways of perhaps working in teams together, or trying to get group work put together. You've had to show resilience when the Wi-Fi might not be working, or one of your teams' connection's really poor. So there's so much things that you've had to go through that other students have perhaps not gone through, and you can bring a completely different set of skills that maybe others that might not have. And we just look at ourselves as a business and go, okay, what skills have we really learned, and what areas of our employees have looked at maybe development. And we kind of used that and looked at that in terms of who's coming into the business. And I think this cohort of students have got some great examples and some great skills that they can bring into any business.
And absolutely. And you mentioned they're working in teams, which of course it has even more meaning now as well, as part of that complete online immersion in work, which is another accentuation of the positive. Matt, is that something that you share at Teach First?
Absolutely. I really like the sort of sentiment there that it's really about what you did do rather than what you didn't do. And I think that's really true. So thinking about online stuff, we're probably a bit different to a lot of graduate schemes that won't necessarily expect a high level of technical competence of online platforms and things, because our roles are still in schools. We're still a frontline role that's the cohort we recruited for this academic year have been in school as normal. So it's probably a bit different in that respect. I think one positive I would draw attention to out of this whole awful year, I mean, it has been awful, let's call a spade. But the one thing I would really draw attention to is I've never seen such willingness from people to give their time to help other people. So if you go onto LinkedIn, for example, there is just a plethora of people on LinkedIn offering to share, jobs, experiences, recommendations. There's just tons and tons of goodwill out there that I think, if anyone sort of watching this is feeling that they don't necessarily have the examples or the confidence isn't there, like, please just ask for people's time, because I've very rarely, I don't know if everyone else would agree with me, but I've very rarely recently seen people say, actually, I can't give you that time. If anything, the time is there that people are willing to give and to help at this, what is a very difficult time for many. Yeah,
absolutely. Ben, obviously you're in the environment where the students and graduates that we're talking about have been experiencing all this. What's your feeling?
It's just showing how resilient students really are. We're extremely proud of the way our cohort adapted to very short notice, everything moving to an online platform last year. This year we have moved back towards more of a blended approach, with larger lectures going virtual, but other opportunities still being there to students to get that practical experience they do need for the workplace. But in terms of the recruitment on our side, it is offering as much support as we possibly can. And we're also finding that by moving that support into the virtual world, we're giving more opportunities for students to access it than ever before. And it's not just the focus on live events, it's the focus on pre-recorded elements, on downloadable content that maybe we've not had time to really look at before. But this opportunity, I don't really like to call it an opportunity, but it has given us time to reevaluate what we're doing and ensuring we're getting the information out to people. So it's that chance for students to get bite-sized information pieces, to be able to book onto a one-on-one conversation. No matter where they are in the world, they will get the information they need about the opportunities available to them. And it's also ensuring our students know that the support that we give them is continuing as well. So, for example, our careers team can work with our students for life. So it's not just up until the point that they've graduated. They're still able to come back virtually, access the facilities and support that they need to ensure that they're able to access the graduate programs that are on offer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tremendous example of, like, say, the adaptation very quickly in your infrastructure, sort of adjusting to meet those needs. And Louise, I mean, what a time for GIST to enter the arena as a graduate recruiter. And
Absolutely.
so all of this will be there next year.
It will be, yes, absolutely. And I think when we look at students now, we're talking about it in our recruitment teams, students are going to have two things in abundance now, which is the ability to deal with change because of the amount of change that has happened to how they've learned, how they've interacted with people, and also resilience, I think, is another key one as well. It's not been an easy year for people. We've had to adapt and change. That will come through. We're not going to be looking at the things we normally would look at if recruiting for graduates. We're going to be looking at things like resilience and change abilities and side things like that. But it's also recognising that people coming out of this are going to be a bit different to what they were going into it. People might be suffering with anxiety. They might be finding things a bit more stressful at the moment, and recognising that with our recruitment processes and making things as easy and simple as possible, and trying to reassure people who are coming through it that we are there for them and we can make the changes that we need them to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of touches also on the way that we go about recruiting. And Ben was mentioning the traditional, what might call the traditional world of graduate recruitment that Teach First and Enterprise were involved in for so many years, was fundamentally about going on campus, and it had that human touch. And of course, all of that has gone. But I'd be very interested to get your thoughts on what place you see for that kind of recruitment practice in the light of everything that's changed this year. Matt, what do you think Teach First are likely to be doing 6 months from now, if it's possible to say that? I'm conscious it's a bit of an ask.
I mean, it is very difficult. It's very, very difficult to say. And, had you said to me 12 months ago that we would be in this situation, I don't think any of us would have believed it. I mean, I have to say I really miss going to campus. I really miss the sort of buzz of being on campus, and I miss the conversations that we have. I think that there have certainly been positives that we've managed to find out of this, in the sense of there's a lot of talk about Zoom fatigue, for example, and people not sort of wanting to join things online. But equally, it has opened up opportunities to people that we wouldn't normally be able to see, whether that's through not necessarily being able to go to their university as much, or just sort of doing things differently. So there are positives to it. I think we haven't had discussions beyond the next sort of 3 to 4 months, really. My vision for my team really is that we will do probably a hybrid approach. We certainly will want to go back to campuses when we are allowed to. I think there's sort of 3 elements really. Do the university want us to come? Do the students want us to come? And is it safe for our staff to come? And unfortunately this autumn, we couldn't say yes to all 3 of those things. And we'll need to be confident that we can say yes to all 3 of those things before we can come back to campus. But I think there is real value. I think if as an employer, if you can run something online for people who want to interact in that way, great. But I also think that there's real value in having something in person. Because it opens up opportunities. You'll stop and speak to a person that you wouldn't necessarily have clicked on what they have to tell you about online. And so it does open conversations that you wouldn't have had before. And I also think that there's something here around many graduates this year will have joined an organisation for which they have never met a physical person from that organisation in person. And I think it's great how so many graduate employers have been able to bring their brands to life and bring their cultures to life online in a way that made it really clear what people were sort of signing up for, and made sure it was a good fit. But I do think that there is a real place for face-to-face interaction in that, and there will continue to be, particularly when the work that they're actually going to be doing when they start goes back to being face-to-face interaction. I think it's quite important to have that in the run-up. So in conclusion, I guess we have no decisions made, but I'm certainly, I personally am very much looking forward to being able to get back out there and see people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you speak for a lot of us there. But Ashley, what's the thoughts along that line at Enterprise at the moment?
Trying to sound boring, but it is similar to Teach First and what Matthew's talked about. Our team are home working at the moment. They I think they cannot wait to get back out on campus and start meeting and talking to people. So, you know, we're a car rental company. It's not the first port of call when it comes to, oh, that's what I want to do when I finish my degree. The face-to-face interaction, and when we're at a careers fair, personally, people, you know, that's when our people can really talk about the career opportunities and the promotions and the diversity initiatives that we do, and show the passion for what it's like for working at the company. And that's something that we have had challenges trying to convert that online. We've done different things and we've had some successes, but I still think, you know, down the line in a year's time, that a careers fair in person is better both for the employer and for a lot of the students who are perhaps based on that campus. There's, you know, we've seen it, and one of the, you know, feedback that we've had from students is that some might not like to go online virtually on their own. Sometimes they'll go to a skills session with 2 or 3 other people. It helps from a confidence perspective, and they might feel more likely to go to something with a couple of other friends or people from their course rather than going on their own. So there's pros and cons to all of that as well. And but there's definitely been some great things that come out of this. We've seen universities doing, you know, combined and joint events together, bringing 7 or 8 universities where they can reach everybody virtually online. We're looking at doing an International Women's Week event, International Women's Day event across the week, with bringing in different universities across the country, so that it opens up the opportunity to more students by doing it virtually, rather than saying, okay, we're just going to do this with Salford. That, you know, students at Portsmouth may not get that opportunity to see that. So there's definitely been some really good pluses to the virtual, and we've been able to pull on people from our business a lot easier to get involved and really tell, you know, from a leadership perspective, what it's like to work at Enterprise. So there's been some great stuff that's come out of it, but I certainly do think it's, you know, it's difficult to replace that coffee, or, you know, where you're having a chat with a student, or you are, you know, working with them on a project, or going and working in an academic situation, or, you know, going there to support one of the student teams and giving your perspective on different things. I think that can be tough to replace, but it's certainly, again, I think there'll be a hybrid from us down the line, but who knows what it looks like. You know, it goes back to Matthew's point. Do the uni want us? Do the students still want to see us? And are employees safe to be there as well? So, but yeah, I would say that our people are desperate to get back out on campus. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, they're desperate to get out on campus, Ben. So what universities are obviously...
You need to let us in, Ben.
Oh, I could travel as well. I say I absolutely feel you with that one. Yeah, I say it's something that we are trying to do. We're trying every which way to get, obviously, either employees to come in and talk to our students. It's all virtual at the moment, as you'd expect. But it's also the other way around. It's about students trying to find out that information about either the early years coming into the undergraduate or the postgraduate opportunities. Being on campus is that experience, and it's something we're working really hard to replicate in the virtual world. But it's something, obviously, we are looking forward to getting back to being able to welcome people onto campus in person, which is why we've put all of these different innovations in place in terms of the virtual content we're doing. It's like everyone else. It's a really good thing that we're able to do. It enables us to open up our information to more people, but it doesn't really replace that face-to-face opportunity, and it's something we're definitely looking forward to being able to reintroduce as soon as the government lets us, and as soon as it's safe to do, more importantly.
Of course. I mean, and Matt's point about the people who've gone into the world of work and still probably physically haven't met necessarily some of the colleagues. That's a profound change, isn't it? I mean, Louise, in terms of, you know, recruitment at JISC, and how can you compensate for that lack of, you know, physical presence and contact with new recruitment?
It's really difficult. I think at JISC we work really flexibly anyway. We measure outputs rather than presenteeism. We're usually working from home a couple of days a week at least as an organisation before all this happened. So it was quite normal for us to have conversations over tools like Zoom and Teams and things like that. But obviously this still impacted us even when we were a bit of ahead of the curve in terms of working from home and flexibility and so forth. I've got people in my team that I've been working with for months that I've never actually met face to face. And it is a strange experience. So I can only imagine what it'd be like for a graduate coming into the workplace for the first time in some instances and not having that face to face interaction with people. So we're doing what we can to engage with people. We have lots of social events over virtual environments. We have plenty of get-togethers as an organisation. People can come in and learn about different parts of the organisation. It's still no replacement for that face-to-face, but we are still trying to bring the organisation together and have that feeling of community as much as we possibly can, because it is missing. It is, it doesn't matter how hard we try, it's not going to be the same. And we can only compensate for that as much as possible rather than totally replacing it. I think when we're looking at careers fairs and things like that, absolutely, it's been really difficult not being able to go to them, particularly as a new organisation into the market. So looking at what we can do as well to engage with people as much as possible.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Building a graduate brand at this time as well. That's a challenge, isn't it? So I think, but the blended future, I think, is obviously what we're looking for. But I suppose it's a related question about: do we expect more of our graduate staff to be working from home much more than they ever would have been expected before? Matt, do you think that's likely to be the future at Teach First?
I mean, at Teach First, as an employer, not for the graduate scheme people into schools, we have always worked at home. I would regularly work at home when not on campus, sort of 2-3 days a week. And I do think that now people have got a taste of it. I do think it will be interesting to see how businesses respond. And my guess would be that it will be, again, a sort of blended approach. With our offices, so we have offices across 10 different regions of the country, and our offices are actually not big enough for everybody who works there. So we tend to, outside of London, we tend to have office space in like a shared working type space where you have a big sort of central space and then a room off that space that's privately yours. If everybody who worked in our Northwest office, for example, came to work, there would not be enough seats for everyone in the office. So it's done on a system that assumes, because a lot of our roles are in schools, it assumes that a lot of people will be out on certain days. And I do think, I hear of lots of organisations that haven't worked in that way before. We always have, but I hear of lots of organisations that have obviously been forced into doing that this time around, and actually they found that it's worked very, very well. And I just love the sort of focus on output rather than time you logged on, time you logged off. And I think it was you, Louise, that said it there about sort of measuring people's actual output rather than a sort of timesheet approach, which I think is very refreshing. And I do think that increasingly it's becoming a bit of an expectation on the candidate side of things.
Thanks, Matt. And I just pause for a moment to say to you out there in the audience, if you have any questions at all for our panel, please pop them into the Q&A and we'll deal with them towards the end. I think this is a theme that has been running through our discussion, and we've talked about the changing nature of the student and graduate experience. Talked about things like resilience and adaptation. But generally speaking, what are you individually as recruiters into study or work? What are you looking for in graduates? I'll start with you, Ben, please.
So for us, it's not really changed what we're looking for. We're just looking for people to have taken advantage of the opportunities given to them. Obviously, students have had a really rough time of it for the past year, so it's not as much about the final experience that they had, but it's what they were able to bring to us as students. It's not just all about the academic focus. It's about what else they've managed to do, how they've adapted, how they've been able to still access facilities, access work. They know that they're coming into a blended environment, and that's something they've come from, especially if they're a recent graduate. In terms of other individuals, obviously, it's an interesting time to look at postgraduate study. People are being, unfortunately, made redundant, the jobs are disappearing, which is to say it's a bad situation. but it's that opportunity that it also gives for students to think they can retrain. The thing with postgraduate education that we're really pushing at the minute, it's not linear. You don't have to just continue in the work you've been doing or the course you did as an undergraduate. It's an opportunity to retrain, to use postgraduate education to change your career. And that's something that we're really trying to emphasize to our students, that there is a chance there to use the funding that's available, to use this time that you might not have had to either look at part-time study, look at distance learning, use the fact that we are trying to be as flexible as possible to take the time to either get that postgraduate qualification you always wanted to do, explore the research that you think that you want to do, that you know, if you know that you want to gain your doctorate in the future. It's the enterprise, but it's also knowing that we have the support there as well. So even if it's something you've briefly considered, the university will be able to offer you support throughout your application, up until the time you join us, and throughout your professional life as well.
And you've seen a real demand, I'm guessing, for postgraduate education in
Absolutely.
this period.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that has increased just in terms of interest, just because, again, it's that making the best of a bad situation. It's that flexibility, that resilience, and that can-do attitude that we really enjoy seeing in our students.
Yeah, and as part of our sort of future you orientation is really about study and work often go hand in hand, and they will be part and parcel of your ongoing development, won't they? So that's good to hear. Ashley, what's our enterprise looking for?
We're not looking for anything different now to what we were looking for in terms of competencies and what we expect from an employee joining us. So again, quite similar to Teach First, our branches were open during the pandemic. We did a lot of work supporting local government, the NHS. So we were still open, and we needed our employees. Our employees were amazing, and some of the things that they've done over these past few months have been brilliant to support their local community. And our head office is, they were slightly different. They have been closed, and we, down in the future will be probably a hybrid model as well, going back to your previous question. But we're not looking for really anything different in our employees that come in. It's about having that wanting and enjoying working with customers, enjoying working in a team, wanting to make a real difference, being able to show that resilience when things might not be going perfectly well for you, and it's about how you bounce back from that and how you come back. And not a massive amount that's really changed. And we have been a bit behind the curve with our jobs this year. Our business, we were hit, our sector was hit quite hard from, through the pandemic, but really excited and really pleased that we're opening up our placement jobs and graduate jobs for next year. They're going to be out this week. So it's great to see that we've got these opportunities coming out, and, the business has bounced back so well from a challenging few months.
That's brilliant to hear, because we know how hard that sector was hit. So that's really encouraging, and I think things are starting to open up in people's minds, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
Louise, I wouldn't expect you to disagree with any of those, but in terms of when we set out your stall for what JISC are looking for, I suppose let's think about the sort of skills and the technical sort of stuff that you would look for in a graduate, apart from all the great qualities.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to answer that, because it depends very much on the vacancies that we've got. Even when we're looking for technical roles, we don't necessarily expect people to have a technical background. We are very, very focused on recruiting the people who are better organisation than those who can come in and maybe hit the ground running and get on with things. We're looking for problem solvers, for people who work well as a team. We're looking for people who can be flexible in their approach and cope with change and that sort of thing. Because if there is one thing I'd say about JISC, is there's a lot of change happening all the time. We're not necessarily looking for the same type of person every time either. We like to see difference in what we do. We really do recognise that the more sort of diverse the minds around the table, the better the solution or the product or the service that we come out with. So it's about people who stand out as individuals, who have those attributes that we're looking for and can really add something to JISC that we we need.
Matt, does that sound like an ideal Teach First candidate as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing I would add, I would agree with everything that's been said. The one thing I would add is this might sound very, very basic, but the whenever there is sort of an economic downturn, applications for everything that's open tend to go up, as people sort of apply for multiple things at once. I would say, I guess my advice would be to just really do your homework on what it is that you're applying for. I don't think any recruiter wants to receive a generic application ever, really. And particularly when you get through to an assessment stage, there will be there's certainly an expectation on our side that you're able to articulate why you want to join this particular program and why you want to do this particular kind of work, which I know sounds very, very basic, but I think sometimes when the attitude of when the mindset of sort of being a bit panicked about outcomes and things and what you're sort of going to do next sets in, it can be quite easy to just fire a load of things off. And I really do think that is a sort of not the right approach, really.
No, that's great advice. It's one of those back to basics that needs reiterating. And Ben, if you were confronting your student self right now, what great advice would you impart to them?
I'd say not to put too much pressure on yourself. It's something that I didn't, as one of my colleagues said, I didn't have a graduate role lined up when I graduated. I had to go and find any job that I could. But the graduate role was there. It took a couple of months for it to become available. It wasn't exactly where I planned to be, but I ended up working in theatre, which I absolutely loved. And it was, again, wasn't what I was expecting. I started as a chemist, I finished as an archaeologist, and I ended up working in the theatre. So every route is not the same. Don't put the pressure on yourself. Believe in yourself. Make sure you've got everything organised. When you're applying, as was mentioned previously, make sure you're doing that really good bespoke application, and it will happen for you. You just got to believe it.
No, that's great. I mean, there is no one single route in, is there? And Ashley, how about yourself? You touched on your graduation experience earlier on. So what would you say to yourself going back?
My future self would be, if you are listening to this or on this, watching this live now, then you've got 5 people on this call who you can easily connect with on LinkedIn. You can start that networking opportunity. As Matthew said, you look at LinkedIn, I agree 100%. Everybody is trying to support other people on there. Everybody's being nice. And, I had someone connect with me who met me 6 months ago at an event I did in longer than that. I think it was just before lockdown, February, in Holland, who said, "You won't remember me, and connected on LinkedIn." And then we've started conversations, and we're now working towards finding them an opportunity. So you've got 5 people connect with us and make the most of that opportunity.
Great advice. Make the most of all of that. Louise?
I think my word, think a little bit differently to what you're thinking right now. I think when I look at my friends who graduated at the same time as me, very few of them are actually doing what they thought they would do when they grew up, as the phrase goes. So think a little bit more creatively, think flexibly. Just because it's not the obvious choice doesn't mean you wouldn't be great at it and you wouldn't enjoy it. So think more widely. And I would say, just to add to the LinkedIn piece, is when you are connecting with people, don't just click connect. Put something in there about you that you might, and explain why you want to connect with that person. You'll get much better responses.
Great. Yeah, totally agree with that. And Matt, the last word is with you.
Agree completely with that. I would also say that there is just this sort of a mindset that you need to get into, that what you think you probably want to do isn't necessarily immediately going to happen. It might do, and it absolutely continue to try to reach it. But I mean, I stood in an officer election at university, and I had no backup plan. I lost the election, and I remember that night of the election, I was absolutely heartbroken. And a couple of hours later, I felt better. A couple of days later, I felt even better. And then it's about that backup plan.
Absolutely fun. Totally agree with that. It's serendipity, and the future is you and the future is yours. And we have 10 seconds left to go. And I'd like to say thank you to Matt, to Louise, to Ashley, and to Ben, and most of all to all of you watching. Enjoy the rest of the day, and good luck with all your career ventures.